Hexwood. The forests of eastern Ossium are dark and deep and trackless. Haunted by centuries of cruel savagery, even with the grip of the dreadful Druge miasma largely broken, they still lie under a shroud of melancholy and danger. Shortly after the autumn equinox, as the freeborn fire of the south lead a great train of Ossium orcs west towards Skarsind, 4 Imperial armies cross the far borders of the Echofell and pass into the forest of Ulnak. When the Empire first took the fight to the Druge, when the armies of Dawn crossed the Semelak on the Golden Causeway to meet their Varushkan and Thule allies, they strode forth with heads high and the Imperial battle anthem echoing across the waters. The invasion of Ulnak could not be more different. An attempt to get the soldiers to sing as the armies begin to mobilise falters almost immediately. Back when the Empire didn't even know the name of the territory it was invading, it seemed paradoxically easier to imagine glory and victory. Now the Empire has seen what the Druge do to their own lands, and what little the Great Forest Orcs have been able to tell them about the Forest of Ulnak suggests that the campaign to conquer it will be even more grim. Again we fight alongside the armies of Dawn. We push on in our advance. We have rested, trained, onwards axes. Katia Straskovich, General of the Golden Axe. Like the woodlands of Ossium, the trees of Ulnak are old, ancient even. 5 soldiers together can barely make a ring around the trunk of some of the largest. Hung with streamers of moss, wreathed in ivy, shrouded in brown, golden autumnal leaves, their branches weave together to create a canopy that blocks out the sun. A ghoulish twilight hangs over everything, adding to the oppressive atmosphere of the menace pervading everything. It is clear that as with Ossium, and with Rykos before it, the Druge have blanketed the forest of Ulnak with a miasma of fear. Even soldiers hardened by the invasion of Ossium find it difficult to resist the persistent disquietude that shrouds the woods. Happy memories seem distant, and it is all too easy to slip into a spiral of self-doubt and regret, or to allow uncertainty to overwhelm courage. The Dornish keep each other's spirits up with a veneer of bravado, with stories of glory, and with gifts of favours. The Varushkans trade black humour and melancholy cautionary tales. We have iron hearts, they joke, as well as iron boots and iron axes. The legacy of the Vard, indeed. It is all too easy to be deceived by a trick of the light into thinking something horrible has just moved behind a tree, or that the natural sounds of the forest presage some surprise attack. Worse, sometimes it is too easy to dismiss a sound or a furtive shadow as a trick of the light when it really is an enemy moving stealthily through the trees. There are Druge here, Druge warriors and scouts apparently keeping a close eye on the western borders of Ulnak. 20,000 Imperial soldiers were never going to be stealthy, but the Druge seemed to be aware of their presence almost as soon as they crossed the border from Ossium. Almost immediately, the armies encounter traps and ambushes. Stragglers are waylaid without warning by fast-moving skirmishers breaking from the undergrowth, sowing as much confusion as possible, then fading back into the brush before anyone can react. Withering arrow fire shreds lightly armoured soldiers, seemingly timed to attack the weakest flanks almost as soon as a force leaves the crushing claustrophobia of the trees and tries to cross an open clearing. The traps are as deadly as they are inventive. Pits whose walls are lined with envenomed barbs, poisoned spikes covered with loose leaves, tapering deadfalls designed to collapse and smother those unfortunate to fall into them. In some cases, entire trees hung from ropes are placed along paths, designed to scythe through the ranks of whatever unit is unlucky enough to trigger them. Some of these waylays are new, but the majority seem to be old, remnants of some internecine conflict between Druge clans perhaps. As with previous forays into the Malum, it is not just the sapient creatures, or the supernatural dread, that test the mettle of the Imperial forces. The natural creatures of the Forest of Ulnak are just as vicious and just as venomous as the orcs. Woe betide the soldier who accidentally disturbs a death stinger hive, or stumbles into a nest of thumb-sized, flesh-hungry ivory ants. The forests also seem to be home to a truly staggering number of different breeds of scorpion, of spider, and of snake. Perhaps it is some perverse side effect of the miasma, but none of these creatures seem to have any fear of humanity. What begins as a joke soon becomes a deadly reality, for the smaller creatures seem drawn to the warmth of human bodies, or the roomy confines of imperial boots left empty for the night. We are the people of the sun, be you noble, errant, or yeofolk. Once more the Dornish armies lead the charge into the unknown, alongside our siblings in the Hounds of Glory and Griffin's Pride. Our Varushkan cousins in the Golden Axe will be with us as we strike fear into the hearts of the Druge. Death to the Druge. Zoranda Orzel, General of the Golden Sun. Despite all its opposition, both active and implicit, the armies make reasonable progress, with the massed ranks of the Golden Axe leading the way. Reinvigorated by the support of their people, the Varushkan soldiers have embraced the weapon, the tool that adorns their standards. Many of them carry great logging axes, and though it slows them down, they quickly demonstrate a proficiency for clearing areas of trees, and using those trees to make compact and defensible camps for themselves and their Dornish allies. Several of them joke that if the Druj have not bothered to build any roads through the heart of their forests, the Golden Axe are just the people to show them how it is done. While the cynical northerners trample tree and orc alike beneath their boots, the Griffin's Pride bring their own expertise to bear. They are here to conquer the Malum, and they will allow neither haunted forest nor Druj butchers to gainsay them. As the axe pushes eastward, the Pride sends contingents of heavily armoured soldiers north and south, scouring the backwards for opposition and for signs of settlement. They do not find many. A few decrepit camps or collapsing villages seem to represent the entirety of the Druj habitation of this part of the forest. Sometimes they encounter ambushes in these villages, but more often they see signs of recent habitation abandoned days or hours before they arrived. The subject tribes of the Druj flee before the Dornish. While the Imperial soldiers may have orders to make contact with the inhabitants, it seems none of the orcs are prepared to risk speaking to the invaders. For their part, the Hounds of Glory and the Golden Sun alternate between pressing forward and consolidating the gains the Empire has made. Their main focus is on reducing losses to the barbarian Druj defenders and their traps and the trackless wilderness. Heavily armoured knights stand guard at night, while more lightly armoured Yo-folk scout ahead of the main forces, engaging the Druj skirmishers on their own terms and retreating as soon as they encounter opposition to provide invaluable warnings to the main body of the Imperial force. Soldiers of the Pride, the time to conquer is upon us once again. We march to the forest of Ulnak to take the land from the Druj once more. We will show their slaves that there is a place in the Empire for them where they can be brought virtue. Stir your courage as we advance once more into the unknown. Remain vigilant against Druj ambushes and villainy. Death to the Druj. Garavain de Rondel, General of the Griffin's Pride. In a way, the land itself resists the Empire. There are no roads, and few tracks. What thoroughfares there are often trapped, yet it would be wrong to call this part of the forest of Ulnak featureless. From time to time the Empire encounters overgrown clearings, some of them large enough to contain an entire Dornish or Varushkan village. Indeed, there are often signs that these places might once have been the site of actual Druj settlements, collapsed farms, discarded pieces of rusted metal, and bones. So many bones. It becomes a common occurrence for a group of soldiers pitching tents for the night or digging latrines to come across the bleached and weathered bones of orcs below the layers of leaf mould, or tangled amongst the roots of trees. Some of the remains seem to date back centuries. These skeletons might go some way towards explaining another unsettling phenomenon that comes as the sun sets and true darkness falls. Especially in the clearings where villages once stood, there are signs that this part of the forest is home to a great many ghosts, spectres, wraiths, and phantoms. At first, the reports are discarded as yet another result of the Druj miasma, but in time the body of evidence becomes overwhelming. These woods are haunted. One band of Varushkan scouts speaks of discovering an entire village of pale-faced, uncommunicative orcs as evening was falling. The inhabitants refused to speak to the soldiers, staring at them with mournful faces, silently huddling together. An hour after sunset, every single one of them vanished, taking their ramshackle cottages with them, leaving the terrified scouts in a ruin-haunted, overgrown dell. Several of these scouts have since disappeared themselves, perhaps prey to some unwholesome curse. While the destroyed villages are bad enough, not all the remains represent orc subject tribes. 3 weeks into the campaign, while setting up camp, an advanced force of Hounds of Glory find dozens of orc remains under a layer of topsoil. When the moon rises and moonlight touches the earth, spectral orc warriors rise out of the grounds itself and fall upon each other, fighting in complete silence. When one of the knights attempted to intercede, the orcs turn as one upon the Dornish invaders. While the phantoms seem at first to be unable to directly harm the living, their weapons leave freezing scars on the skin where they strike, and all those injured by the ghostly warriors quickly fall into a terrible despondence from which only the direct aid of a troubadour is able to rouse them. Despite this, the Empire's invasion has not been repulsed. Far from it. After 6 weeks, the armies have managed to claim a little over half of the great spreading forest region and sent a few scouts to explore neighbouring areas. At this point, however, the Imperial forces begin to encounter serious resistance. A major force of orcs arrive, accompanied by several warbands of Pakad in chitinous black armour. Under banners of rearing emerald scorpion and savage-clawed ebony beetle, these orcs put up a spirited defence, slowing the advance to a crawl. From thorough interrogation of captured prisoners, the Golden Axe are able to ascertain that these troops are part of the garrison of the grand fortress mentioned by the Great Forest Orcs, the citadel of Casadoln, built in the foothills to the north. Their orders are apparently to slow the invaders by whatever means necessary, rather than to drive them out, to keep them in the western forest until winter, the implication being that the Druj have prepared a strategy for dealing with the Dornish and Varushkan forces. Let us spread the example of the Sandfishers to the subject tribes of Ulnak, a steady conquest with troubadours spreading the message to any that will listen. Bring colours and faith to those who were once miserable to turn on their Druj tormentors. Tancred, General of the Hounds of Glory. While the Golden Axe question defeated soldiers, the Golden Sun are finally able to make some belated contact with those few orcs living in the forest. For the most part, the orcs are terrified of the humans, but an audacious troubadour travelling with the Hounds of Glory manages to make peaceful contact with 2 of them. At last, the Empire is able to learn the name of the haunted wilderness they are attempting to conquer: Urwald, the trackless forest. Stumbling over their words, these frightened orcs are able to provide at least a partial explanation as to why the forest is so empty of life. According to their information, the Druj have spent the last year raising a new army in the forest of Ulnak, in the eastern farmlands, an army made terrible by the blessings of the Scorpion Queen and empowered with potent elixirs and potions brewed with an indescribable quantity of herbs and the arts of the Buruk Tepel of the clan of the Ebon Beetle. The orcs were not prepared to say much more afraid of their Druj masters and the vengeful Spider Queen than they were eager for the food and drink the troubadour offered. But they did share several heartbreaking tales about how Urwald came to be haunted. After generations of fighting between the clans, a terrible curse was laid on the place long ago by the defeated Buruk Tepel of the extinguished Woodcreeper clan. Those few villages left in the trackless forest belonged to the last remnants of the Woodcreeper, condemned by the rest of the Druj to live among the ruins of their former glory. Stories of ghosts and curses are all very well, but there are Druj to be fought. As the winter solstice draws near, the Imperial forces are halfway towards claiming Urwald, perhaps as much as 3/5. The audacious strategies of the Golden Sun and the Golden Axe have allowed the invasion to make more progress than they might have in the face of the miasma and the opposition from the soldiers of the citadel of Casadoln. Of particular note is that there is no magic at work in the forest of Ulnak, at least none that the Empire is familiar with. It seems that for all of their preparations, the Druj have not turned the full might of their baleful power to the task of protecting the great woodland, an oversight that no doubt they will rectify in the coming weeks. Game information: Forest of Ulnak. The Empire has no map of the Forest of Ulnak. As with the earlier invasion of Ossium, it is thus difficult to know for sure what is going on in the territory. There is certainly a very large fortification somewhere in the territory, in the mountainous north if the Great Forest Orcs' information is to be believed. The region the Empire is currently engaged in conquering has the forested and haunted qualities, and is cloaked in the Druj miasma, which means that there is at least one miasma pillar somewhere in its depths. Urwald appears to be bounded by additional forested regions to the north, east and south. It is possible that the scouts dispatched to perform long-distance reconnaissance may be able to provide more information about the neighbouring regions, assuming they are able to avoid the attentions of the Druj, the verminous wildlife, and the confusing shadows that pool beneath the ancient trees. Despite the presence of the Druj garrison, the armies have not suffered any significant casualties. While there are rumours of a new army being mustered in the territory, it has not been encountered at this time.